Hey everyone, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make our fuzzy Lovey blanket. Now this is not a blanket to cover up a child or baby with. It's a blanket to love on, to cuddle, and it has a pre-made animal or stuffed baby that you can put in it of your choice. And the neat thing about this is you can make these in the nursery colors or your friend's favorite colors, or just make it pretty and add a fun stuffed animal that you can buy at the store. We're going to make this one today in these beautiful colors, but I want to show you the other one that I made in pinks. This one I just purchased a little stuffed poodle from the store, and I made it all in pinks because my friend is having a baby girl, and I made this one for them, for their baby girl. All right, and it's super easy. It's basically a big granny square with a beautiful trim. This one is super soft. The other one's super soft as well. And you can make it bigger or smaller, as you'll see a little farther on in the pattern. This one measures approximately 20 by 20 inches. The pink one's a little bigger. It measures about 22 by 22 inches. So there is some room in there to make it bigger or smaller if you want to. Now you can find all the pattern information and stitch counts, measurements, any information you may need, along with a bunch of new pictures. You can find that on my blog, and as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes in that description box underneath this video. To make our fuzzy Lovey blanket, you're going to need a bulky, I guess I should say super bulky, number 6 yarn that's fuzzy. Now, if you don't prefer the fuzzy yarns, you can use a super bulky 6 that's not fuzzy. I really like the fuzzy. You're going to need about 9 ounces, which equals out to about 65 yards. And I'm using the Chenille Heathered Yarn. This is by Mainstay. This color is called Multi Pastel. It has all kinds of teal and pink and purple and yellow and white, and it's sort of modeled in there. It's a beautiful yarn. This one's in a ball because I was practicing with it yesterday just to see how it would work up, and I really love the way it works up. You're also going to need about 3 ounces, or maybe about 25 to 30 yards of a trim color. And I'm using this white. It is also a bulky number 6. Oh, whoops, super bulky number 6. And it is a Bernat blanket yarn. It is just a white. And I liked it. I thought it was perfect with this yarn. If they had this one in white, I would have picked it up, but I didn't see any. But this is going to work just fine. It's also, like I said, a super bulky number 6 yarn. So you need about 9 ounces of a main color and about 3 ounces of a trim color. Now you'll notice I have some stuffed babies here. You can make a stuffed baby to go with it, or you can just purchase one. Here's one that's a Beanie Boo that I'm going to use today. And this is just a little puppy that I bought at the Dollar Tree. You can use any stuffed animal for this, because the way we begin, we're going to start with a circle, and then you can slide that baby, that stuffed baby, stuffed puppy, whatever you've got, up inside there. That way they can take the baby out and play with it, or the stuffed unicorn, and play with it separate from the blanket if they want to. It's just a fun little concept I thought was really cool. We're going to be stitching our blanket today with an end hook that is a 9mm crochet hook. Now some of them are a 10mm, so be careful when you're picking yours out that you get a 9mm crochet hook. And then you'll need a needle that has a great big eye in it. When you're weaving in blanket yarns or thick yarns, it can be a little bit more difficult, but don't worry, I'll show you how I do it. We're going to start with our main blanket color, or color 1. We'll start with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 12 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now we're going to join this chain 12 into a circle. So we'll take the tail of our yarn, put it over our hook, and pull it through that loop. All right, now we're going to make what's called a stay knot. We're just going to knot that up. All right, now this is our chain 12 loop, and we're going to stitch our first row around that chain 12. We're going to be stitching around it, not in the stitches. So we're going to go in, pull up a loop, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This chain 3 counts as 1 double crochet. Now, when you're working with a fuzzy yarn like this, it can be difficult to see your stitches. All right, so you're just going to have to really look and pay attention to your stitches. All right, we're going to stitch a double crochet. So yarn over, go in, pull up our loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. Now we're going to chain 2. 1 and 2. You'll also notice that I'm stitching over this tail of yarn. So now we're going to stitch 2 double crochets, 1, 2, and chain 2. So there's 1 corner made. And now we're going to stitch 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, and you probably have to squish those around. We got a lot of stitches to fit in here. And then we'll stitch 2 more double crochets, 1, 2, and chain 2. So now we have 1, 2 corners made. And we're going to do this 2 more times. So squish those around so we can fit them all in our chain 12. Our chain 12 loop. All right, 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. 1, 2, and chain 2. All right, so we have 1, 2 sets of 2 double crochets with the chain 2 before, or in the middle and next. Then we have 2 sets of 2 double crochets with chain 2 and chain 2. And then we have double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 2. So now we just need to do 1 more set of 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2. All right, so chain 2. We got to squeeze those in there. We want them all to fit. 2 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 1, 2. All right, now we're going to join to the chain 3. So you're going to have to find it. Use your fingers. Find that 3rd chain. We're going to stitch a slip stitch. And let's take a look at it real quick. It really still looks just like a circle. And you should have 4 groups of 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2. And we do 4 groups of them. There's our chain where we stitched our slip stitch. Now we're going to slip stitch into that next double crochet. Then slip stitch into the chain 2 space and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, and this is the way that our first row should look. This is our tail of yarn, and before we go any farther, let's go ahead and make sure that inside that chain. So we're going to put our hook in under those stitches and pull that loop in there. We want it to stay put. And then you can pull it just a little bit and then grab those scissors and clip that off. Now that's all weaved in, and we have our 4 sets of 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2. And it doesn't look like a square just yet, but it will. And one thing I want you to notice also is this is the space where we're going to put our stuffed baby. You'll just take your stuffed baby and stuff it in there. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll show you when we get to the finish of it, okay? All right. That's round number 1. On row or round number 2, we're going to form the corners, all right? So we're in our first chain 2 space. We have our chain 3. We're going to stitch a double crochet in this chain 2 space and chain 2. And now we're going to stitch 2 more double crochets in this same chain 2 space. And chain 2. This brings us to the next chain 2 space. In this chain 2 space, we're just going to stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. And you can see by using this big, super bulky number 6 yarn, this is going to work up really quickly. All right, let's chain 2. We'll go to our next chain 2 space and we'll stitch our corner, which is 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets in this same chain 2 space, 1 and 2, and chain 2. So we've made a corner, we've made a side, and we've made a corner. Now we're to the next chain 2 space and we're going to stitch 2 double crochets, 1, 2, and chain 2. Now we'll come over to our next chain 2 space and stitch a corner, which again is 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and again chain 2, 1 and 2. All right, so we've done this side over here and this side. Now we come to our next chain 2 space and stitch 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and chain 2. All right, so now we just have to stitch another corner and another side. So 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, which brings us to our last chain 2 space, and we'll stitch 2 double crochets. Get in there. 1 and 2, chain 2, and then we'll join to the top of that chain 3, and we'll kind of use our thumb and our finger to find that stitch. Oops, I missed it. Got to get in there. There we go. And slip stitch. Then we'll slip stitch in that next double crochet, slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and chain 3. Alrighty. So we have our 4 corners and our 4 sides. And this is just about the softest, fluffiest yarn I have ever worked with. when you're first working with this, it can be a little bit not difficult or hard, just hard to get used to. So don't let it frustrate you. Just keep working with it. It'll come out, I promise. It's so pretty. And this is how row 2 should look. 4 corners and 4 sides. Let's do round 3. So we have our chain 3, and we're going to do the corners the same. So I'm going to double crochet, chain 2, and stitch 2 double crochets in this same chain 2 space. 1 and 2. And then chain 2. So on the side here, now we have 2 chain 2 spaces. So I chain 2, I'm going to go in the first chain 2 space and stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. And chain 2. Then I'll go in the next chain 2 space and stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. And chain 2. And so that's the way the first side will look. We have our corner, which is 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Then we chain 2 and stitch 2 double crochets in the chain 2 spaces with, of course, chain 2s in between. We chain 2, and this brings us to our next corner. And so we'll stitch 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. And so now what we're going to do is chain 2, and again we'll stitch 2 double crochets in each of these chain 2 spaces with chain 2s in between. So 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. 1 and 2 in that chain 2 space, and chain 2. And so this is the way that row 3 will work. And you notice I'm sort of pulling that out. That's just to get it to lay nice and flat, because this yarn does kind of want to bunch up a little because of all those fuzzy pieces, okay? And so what we're going to do is to continue to repeat what we did over here on these 2 sides. The corner, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Then we chain 2, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, chain 2, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, and chain 2. And then we'll repeat that on these 2 sides and join back to our chain 3. I have completed round 3. I've got my 4 corners and then 2 sets of double crochets with chain 2s in between on my sides. Here's my last chain 2. I'm going to join to the chain 3 with a slip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch in that double crochet and then slip stitch in the chain 1 space. And by doing those slip stitches, it gets us to the corner. All right, now we're going to chain 3 and we're going to do round 4. And round 4 is pretty much the same as round 3. The only difference is we have 3 chain 2 spaces instead of the 2. The corners are stitched the same. So my chain 3 counts as my first, so I'll double crochet in the corner and chain 2, and then 2 double crochets in that same chain 2 space in that corner. There we go. So there's my corner. Now we're going to chain 2 and then 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. 1, 2, and then chain 2, and then I'll repeat this across this side, stitching 2 double crochets in the chain 2 spaces with chain 2s in between. go. And so I have 3 2 double crochet sets with my chain 2s in between. Now I'm going to chain 2 and do the corner the same as we've been doing. 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2 and 2 double crochets in this same chain 2 space. And that's going to form that corner. All right, then chain 2 and repeat across, stitching 2 double crochets in the chain 2 spaces with chain 2s in between. 1 and 2. 1 and 2 double crochets and chain 2. And here's my last chain 2 space on that side. And chain 2. So now we're going to end up having 1, 2, 3, 4 chain 2s to stitch our sides in, but we have 3 sets of our 2 double crochets. Okay, so there's my chain 2, and I'll go right to that next chain 2 space for my corner. One and 2 chains and 2 double crochets. And so you're seeing that this is really a simple pattern. What makes this fuzzy Lovey so much fun is it's so fuzzy. And I think you and your babies and your kiddos are really going to love this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat the corner, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Then we'll chain 2 and 2 double crochets in each of our chain 2 spaces, so we'll have 3. Then we'll chain 2 and go to our corner, and we'll repeat what we did over here on these last 2 sides, and again join back to our chain 3. I have completed round 4 of our square for our blanket, and we'll have 3 sets of 2 double crochets with our chain 2s in between, and that's going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4 chain 2 spaces for row 5 or round 5. All right, so I'm going to join to my chain 3 with a slip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch in that next double crochet and then slip stitch in the chain 1 space and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And you'll notice that I have completed my first ball of yarn. And so I want to bring in my next ball of yarn for this project. Okay, so this can be a little bit different than trying to do the Russian join with this thick yarn. You'll end up with a nice big ball of ends, and you don't want that. All right, so what you do, I'm going to take out that last chain of that chain 3, and I'm going to bring in my new color or my new yarn like this. All right, so then we have these 2 ends, and we're going to go ahead and stitch around them. There's my second double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. That's my first corner. I'm going to go ahead and chain 2, and then we'll have these to deal with when we're done, and we'll use this big needle here to weave those in. And it will be a little bit difficult, but I'll show you when we get finished how to tidy that up so that it looks nice and neat. But that's how you want to bring in your next color. All right, and so what we're going to do, we have 4 rounds. We're going to stitch 2 more rounds, and we'll increase by a chain 2 on each side so that we'll have an extra set of our 2 double crochet, chain 2 on each side of each row. And we're going to repeat this for 2 more rows. All right, so we're going to do the corners the same. We're going to chain 2 and stitch 2 double crochets in each of our chain 2 spaces all the way around, and then we'll repeat this for 2 more rows, or until we reach row 6. We've completed row 4, and we're going to do 2 more rows. I have completed those next 2 rows, and on row 6 you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of your 2 double crochets with your chain 2s in between, and of course 4 corners. And at this point your blanket's going to measure approximately 17 inches. Now if you want your blanket bigger, you can certainly make it bigger, but please keep in mind this is a Lovey blanket, not a blanket to cover up your child with. It's more for them to cuddle with that baby in the middle. I'm going to cut this yarn, but I'm going to leave a little bit. And if you want to make it bigger than this, you're going to need more yarn. I'm going to keep that in mind, because at the end of my second ball of yarn, this is all that I have left. All right, so keep that in mind when you're purchasing your yarn. All right, so now we're going to add in our trim color. And I'm using this white blanket yarn from Burnett Blanket. These are our ends. We'll have to weave those in, and I'll show you how to do that when we're finished with the trim. All right, so what we're going to do in this first corner is we're going to go in, pull up a loop, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So we've chained 3, and we're going to stitch 3 more double crochets in this corner. 1, 2, and 3. Our shell stitch is going to consist of 4 double crochets. Now we're going to go and stitch between these 2 double crochets a single crochet. Now we'll go to the next chain 2 space and stitch 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we'll stitch a single crochet between these next 2 double crochets. Then we'll move to our next chain 2 space and stitch 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And stitch a single crochet between the next 2 double crochets. And so that's our repeat all the way around all 4 sides of our Lovey blanket. 4 double crochets in each of the chain 2 spaces, including the corners. Our 4 double crochets is our shell stitch, and then we'll single crochet between the next 2 double crochets. And we'll repeat this, working all the way around all 4 sides of our fuzzy Lovey blanket. Again, that's 4 double crochets in each of the chain 2 spaces, including the corners, and a single crochet between the next 2 double crochets all the way around. So I have completed the trim all the way around, and I really love the way the trim works up on this. All right, so here's our corner. Here's where I stitched my last single crochet. I'm going to join to that chain 3 with a slip stitch. We're going to cut this. We're going to go behind and pull that loop behind so it looks pretty, and tie that off. All right, so now we have a few ends to weave in, and I have a nice big needle with a nice big eye. It can be difficult to weave these ends in. All right, so what I do is I try to go underneath a few stitches, and I'll go back and forth. And we need to be careful because we don't want to make a big blob of a chunk of yarn because it is such a thick yarn. But you want to go back and forth through stitches, and if you can get through fibers, do that as well. All right, so here I have this end to weave in as well, so I'll go ahead and finish this one off. There we go, and clip that. And we have these two ends to weave in as well. Now, when you're trying to get it into a needle, I take the end of it and sort of flatten it out. I lay it across the needle, and then I sort of just start pushing it that way until it's through. These white ones are a little thinner, even though they are still a bulky 6, but they are a little bit thinner, so a little bit easier to work with. If you do not have a needle that you can work with it like this with, another way to do that is to grab your crochet hook, take your end, and you'll just have to weave it in this way. Both of the ways will hold pretty well, but you want to make sure that this is going to be able to be loved on and played with without coming undone. And so I just keep weaving it back and forth until there isn't any more yarn left. All right, so I need to weave this one in and this one in, and then I'll show you how to add that baby to it. So this is the baby that I've chosen to put with my Lovey. This is one of those Beanie Boos. It's soft and squishy. I would remove the tag when you do this and when you give it to a baby. You may want to leave the tag when you give the gift, but put a note in the card to remove that tag, okay? So this is the front. So we're going to go under here. We're going to squish the head because you want it to be a nice tight fit. All right. So there's my Lovey with my unicorn. Isn't that adorable? And once you finish your Lovey, after your trim, it is going to measure about 20 by 20 inches. Okay. And so it's a nice size for kiddos to love on, to play with, and it's easily able to remove it, although mommy and daddies, grandmas and grandpas may need to help, but it is going to stay secure in that nice circle for them to play with. And I thought this unicorn that's blue and pink and yellow is perfect for this particular color of yarn. Isn't that cute?